We are very excited to get your take on this first topic because it's an eye-opening article published in the New York Times today. Sinead O'Connor reflected on her career and the moment she ripped up that picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live. She said despite the public perception that that moment killed her career, she felt liberated because for her, being a pop star felt like being in a prison. So the question is, have you ever struggled with how the public perceives you versus who you think you really are inside?
No.
I mean,
no. I just haven't. But you know what? I can absolutely relate to what happened to her. In the early 90s, you know, the late 80s, something extraordinary was happening globally, and that was the grunge scene on the west coast of the United States, and it was taking over the world. It was Alice in Chains, Nirvana. It really was a massive scene. And then there was Sinead, and she really was a standalone. I think when you have a woman that has shaved her hair off, and most female pop stars, their hair is their currency. It is their big thing. And, you know, here she was standing there very vulnerable, not using that as a tool. She wasn't monetizing beauty, although she was extraordinarily beautiful. And to do the Prince song, Nothing Compares to You, and have the instant success and fame that came with that must have been something for her that you can't even articulate when you lay in bed at night. To have that happen literally, and I hate when people use the word literally all the time, but it was literally overnight. And I think there was a lot of expectations that dogged her, what she would do next. But it was a lot of pressure, and I think she was already a very mentally fragile person.
Jan, I feel like you had a lot of success in the States and around this same time. Like, did you have pressure from record companies or from music video creators to kind of shape your look or change the way that you were presenting yourself?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was always weight, but it wasn't from the usual suspects that you might think. It wasn't men for the most part. Although I tell this story, you guys have heard me say it before, big record executive, 250-pound man says, Arden, you're 30 pounds away from superstardom. And my mom said to me on a phone call later, well, why didn't you tell him you didn't want to gain any more weight? That's always my go-to story. But women on the American side especially were always kind of nipping at me about, oh, that doesn't look right on you, and head to toe, that's just not the right color. It was really petty, but I almost feel like they were trying to validate their jobs in the promo department or the marketing department, that they just had to say something. I did it one time, David Letterman show. I let them dress me from head to toe in a Donna Karan shiny suit. They backcombed my hair like Sandra Dee. I wasn't even concentrating on the song because I was so not feeling like who I was. I never did it again. I never let anyone dress me.
You're so outspoken, and we have, heard you share your opinion on our show. And I think what is so fascinating and, disturbing about the Sinead O'Connor example is that she wasn't just radical in terms of how she presented herself physically, but she was quite radical in how she presented her opinions at the time. Like, she was saying unpopular things that have turned out to be right. So what was the reaction, given that you were in the industry at the time, to a woman, a female artist, going on stage on such a big platform and making such a statement and then being backlashed? Like, what were the reverberations in the industry?
I think there was a lot of people that were kind of cheering her on, to be honest. They may not have done it publicly. You have to understand that when that happened, social media wasn't a thing. So the only people really weighing in were big media. And I think, the Catholic Church carries a lot of weight. I know nothing about Catholicism. I am not a religious person in the least. So to watch her rip up a picture of the Pope, I had absolutely no dog in the hunt. I had no emotional investment in what that meant to Catholics all over the world. But like I said, I think had the general public been able to weigh in, I feel like it would have been a much fairer narrative.
You know what, though? I've got to ask, since then, we've all been currently, I think since the Britney Spears documentary and I think other things, we've been looking back and reassessing our own reactions to these big stories that involve pop stars, specifically female pop stars, and the raw deal that they got, and the idea that culture was pushing out and also accepting only one type of pop star, and it was the bubblegum, like low-slung jeans, all-American girl. And then you had Sinead O'Connor, and she had this angelic, gorgeous face. And then, she shaved her head, and then people, but she still had that beauty. So she was almost like a candy wrapped up in a little bit of rebellion. And then when the rebellion went too far, then she got the major hand slap. And so I always think now, when I think of that time of music, who not only I gravitated to, but the who is allowed to be rebellious. And you don't get a Pink artist today, or you don't get a Billie Eilish today without the Sinead O'Connor of that time. And so the question really is like, did that actually end up pushing the door wide open, you think, Jan, for the Billie Eilishes of the world to be able to be like, yeah, whatever?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you make such a good point. I think, ironically, when she ripped the picture up of the Pope, on Saturday Night Live, if people aren't familiar with what she did, it catapulted her. She was probably the most famous person on the planet. And that did break down a lot of doors. It opened a dialogue. It opened, people talking about what she did. It's right, it's wrong, it's offensive. I think there's that very famous saying, I believe it was it Eleanor Roosevelt, well-behaved women seldom make history, or was it Mae West? Who was that credited to? We don't even know. It was, but yeah, it's a great line. And I think to not give her credit for kicking those doors down for women, we would be remiss to do that. I think right along that time when I was coming up, I signed my record deal in 1992. I mean, all of a sudden, I actually could just be myself, and I could do the kind of music that I wanted to do, and I didn't really have to cater to any particular thing. And I think what you were alluding to as well, Melissa, was the idea of young women in pop music, especially, being very, very highly sexualized. And I think that story is still there, but I think the women, Billie Eilish, Beyonce, Pink, I think these are all women that can absolutely control every aspect of what, of their lives. They control what they're wearing. I know that you guys were speaking to Billie Eilish's Vogue, British Vogue cover a little while ago, and it was really interesting to hear your comments about, how she presented herself, and she got all kinds of flack from people. You're never going to please everybody all the time, but she stands firm on her beliefs, how she wants to present herself. And I was happy to see her come out with a new line of swag in the last couple of days. That's all this big, baggy, really cool, stuff. It's not, she didn't come out with a corset line. She came out with,
Yeah, it's true.